a.m. on this 16th of March 2021, and we will call this meeting to order. We will start, as usual, with our chaplain prayer and pledges, and I think we have our chaplain, Mr. Ralph Dawkins, here to lead us in prayer. Would you please come forward?
Let us pray. Father, I pray for those who are in authority over this city. I pray and lift up the mayor, her staff and assistants, and the city council, the city manager, and every person and department that is instrumental in leading and directing our city. I pray that you would bless them to work together today in unity to tackle the items that are on the agenda today. May you keep division from among them. And I pray that you would give them godly wisdom and directions and instruction on how to lead, manage, and operate the city and all of its departments. I pray that you would give these leaders knowledge and guidance on how to deal with drugs and violence and crime and other problems facing our city and its people. I pray for the chief of police and the entire police force, the fire chief and the fire department, and all the first responders who serve this city. Lastly, I pray that you would bless our city with economic prosperity. May you draw in and attract to our city industry, businesses, and corporations that will produce jobs and revenue and help our city to grow and prosper. I commit all of these things to you, Lord. And regardless of how things may seem in the natural, I confess that you are Lord over our city and that you will bring everything that we have prayed to come to pass for this city council meeting. It is in Jesus' name we pray. Amen, and amen. We will now do the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would join me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you.
We have one proclamation this morning. I think Dave Erickson is in the audience. Would you please come forward? And come on. Proclamation of Texas Small Business Development Day. The 79-county Southwest Texas Border SBDC network has provided small business assistance to starting and growing Texas's small businesses. The 31,868 advising clients and the 25,198 training participants in 2020 represent a large percent of the 148,784 employer businesses. Working with its economic development partners, the Angelo State University Small Business Development Center continues to demonstrate its service, hard work, and continued commitment that has helped small businesses in San Angelo and the surrounding 9-county area to survive, recover, and prosper. When COVID-19 stay-at-home orders were first issued March of 2020, the Southwest Texas Border SBDC network immediately pivoted small business advising and training for virtual delivery. Additionally, CARES Act funding administered by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, allowed the SDVD to bring additional resources to our service area. To date, the Southwest Texas Border SBDC network has assisted more than 11,858 entrepreneurs with COVID-19 disaster-related business assistance. The virtual and in-person advising and training has resulted in over $51 million in EIDL, PPP, other SBA load products, and local grant and loan program funding. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim March 17th as Texas Small Business Development Center Day in San Angelo, Texas, and call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens. Congratulations, Dave. Job well done.
Thank you.
Would you like to speak, please?
Yes, please.
And then we'll take a picture,
Okay,
so
great.
go ahead.
Thank you. You bet. Well, thank you, Mayor and City Council for this proclamation. Thank you, Mayor Gunter and City Council, city staff, for your leadership during COVID crisis and also the Snowvid crisis recently. As an advocate for small business, we sure appreciate the work and leadership you did. I want to give special thank you to the Water Utilities Department for all that they did during the Snowvid crisis. I want to accept this on behalf of the SBDC staff, who have done a great job during this time. With us today also is Desiree Johnson, one of the business advisors. And I'd like to say hello to our own Sarah Delgado, who is a student intern at the SBDC and representative of the student staff that work underneath the regular business advisors and do a great job. And we appreciate the work you do, Sarah. So, to all small businesses out there, we're amazed, continue to be amazed at your resilience, your passion, and your perseverance during this time. It's an honor to serve you, and you all have tremendous grit. That's what passion and perseverance is. And some of the greatest people I know are small businesses here in San Angelo. So thank you as an advocate for small business to the small business community.
We will now go into our public comment section of the agenda. Issues or concerns not on the regular agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, address all comments to the dais, begin by stating their name and address or single-member district number, and limit their remarks to less than 3 minutes. First thing I would like to talk about this morning is sidewalks. And I'm going to talk about sidewalks because there appears to be a thought that the city of San Angelo has financed all of the sidewalk development on Knickerbocker and North and South Bryant Boulevard. We've talked about it at several other city council meetings, but I want to make sure we go back over that again so that you don't believe we're wasting money on sidewalks when we know there's work that needs to be done on our streets. So the sidewalk project on Knickerbocker Road and Bryant Boulevard is under contract to TxDOT. It was contracted in August 2019 to FNH Construction, LLC, at an amount of $4,491,789. This federal, state funding distribution for this project is 80-20. It is focused on alleviating the ramps to nowhere, appearance of current pedestrian facilities, providing a safe ADA/TDLR compliant connection along these major arteries. And when we say 80-20, that's federal and state. Again, it is not any local tax dollars that would have been used towards any of our residential streets. The funding for this job is derived from a statewide curb ramp/sidewalk program issued competitively to TxDOT districts specifically for this type of work and it is focused on closing gaps in connectivity created by earlier sidewalk ramp construction in state highway right-of-way to bring us into compliance with ADA and TDLR requirements. As such, this funding is above and beyond what is available to the San Angelo MPO or Metropolitan Planning Organization or the San Angelo District and helps offset the burden on discretionary funding sources. I repeat again, the funding is federal and state. It is not your local dollars, tax dollars going towards those sidewalk projects. We also want to talk a minute about Suddenlink, as we know that there continues to be a huge problem with the Suddenlink customer service issues. Today we were going to talk about what you can do to help make sure that Suddenlink understands what you are feeling and the lack of service that they have. We're not prepared today to totally go into all the details, but Teresa, you might want to offer just a few comments on it, and then we will do a more formal announcement at the next City Council meeting.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. With the Suddenlink agreements that we've looked at, there are prohibitions within the contracts that prohibit the city from really assisting people in dealing with those issues they're having with Suddenlink. And it also prohibits folks from joining together in class action lawsuits to deal with those issues. So what we're preparing and we'll have released in the near future is some forms and some videos that teach people how to file for arbitration on their own against Suddenlink. We're still in the process of finalizing all that, but when that comes out, people should watch our social media. We hope it'll be informative and a way to teach you what your rights are and how to enforce those rights on your own.
We are fully aware of the frustration, the lack of customer service, the standing in line outside, waiting to have an opportunity to visit with them. We understand that you're very frustrated. We hear from you all on an ongoing basis, and any of you that might be in the audience today who want more specifics on the Suddenlink issue, please talk to Teresa following the meeting, and she'll give you more specific details on what you might go ahead and start doing before we release the more formal announcement in terms of what you may be able to do to move forward. But each of our council members have heard from many of you on an ongoing basis for over a year. We are fully aware of the customer service issues, but please continue to forward any of the information that you would like us to have on existing problems, and we will continue to work with you to solve these issues. With that, I will open up the floor for further public comment. Is there anyone in the audience today who would like to offer public comment? Okay. With no further comments, we will now move into the consent agenda. I will start by asking Billy if there's anything from the consent agenda that she would like to pull.
Nothing, ma'am.
Lane?
No, ma'am.
Lucy?
No, ma'am.
Tommy?
No, ma'am.
Tom?
No, ma'am.
Harry?
E.
Item E. With that, may I have a motion to approve all the consent agenda items with the exception of E?
So moved.
Tommy made a motion. May I have a second? A second by Billy. Any public comment at this point? With none, we will take a vote. All in favor of approving the consent agenda with the exception of item E, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, consent agenda is approved, and we will now go to item E. Item E is consider approving a policy limiting animal service area to San Angelo city limits. Morgan, you're here to talk to us about this item.
Good morning,
And-
sure.
Harry, I'm going to start by letting you ask some questions.
Certainly. Morgan and I have visited, and I'm comfortable with what she told me on the research. What I want citizens to hear from Morgan is, how did we get to this spot? Children and animals are the most emotional item that we can talk about. And I am sure that you have already heard from people in the county that we've got, how's this going to impact us? So I want Morgan to be able to talk to these 17,000 people that watch this Channel 17. So, Morgan?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. One thing we wanted to share about how we got here is in 2015, we had adopted a policy to limit our intake to Tom Green County only. Prior to that, we did serve a 13-county region of the Concho Valley. When we stopped serving those other areas, I researched them and found out what did they do in the absence of San Angelo Animal Services, because I presumed that if we did consider this policy, that the Tom Green County residents would do something similar. So for some of those groups, they have put in animal control. They do have, some have access to small amount of sheltering, but for the most part, they resolve their animal issues with a grassroots effort. So for example, they may be used to dogs running loose in their neighborhood. They know where they belong. If there was an incident or anything, they know who to reach out to. Hey, this is your dog. I need some more information. Or they find a stray dog or have an unwanted litter of kittens. They post it on social media or with any of the services online to try to rehome that pet themselves. And so we think there's already some level of that already happening in the county. For example, animal services officers patrol and enforce regulations inside city limits. It's a 61 square mile area. Tom Green County encompasses a 1,500 square mile area. So if only 10% of my intake, or about 400 animals, are coming in from the county, I believe we're already not serving all the county animals. They're already finding their own solutions, resolving animal issues in a grassroots effort type of way without our interference. And so I foresee that is what the county would do. I do want to clarify that we, of course, reached out to county leadership, and they are supportive of this. They did want to ensure that we would still support arrests. So, for example, any jurisdiction, SAPD or DPS or Tom Green County, if they have an arrest and a person has a pet on their person, either a person experiencing homelessness or on their vehicle, we do take custody of that animal while the person is in jail, and then when they get out, they do redeem that animal. So we are going to continue providing that service, but as far as the intake of stray, owned, or quarantine animals, that is what's before you today, to no longer offer to county residents.
So if someone's in the county, for the public's information, where would they take an animal? If we're not going to accept them in the city's animal shelter, and it is funded by the city's tax dollars, not the county tax dollars, right? No, the county does not put a single penny into our animal shelter expenses?
That's correct. So if, for example, if a citizen owns a pet and no longer wants that pet, they can post it on social media through those kind of services to try to rehome their own pet. If a citizen has found a pet, they can post it on findingrover.com, helpmegethome.com, and try to reunite with the owner, or they may post it on their own social media trying to find a new home for that pet.
Can you tell the audience what else is out there, who else is out there in terms of services? So like Cassie's Place would be one, is that correct?
There are other rescues in town that could provide those services. They've submitted written requests to the city asking that I no longer list them to citizens or in any public manner.
Okay, so what are the alternatives? Simply grassroots?
Yes, posting online and social media and through these online services like findingrover.com, I believe will be the primary services available.
Say that slow again.
Posting found pets on findingrover.com or helpmegethome.com or the Facebook groups San Angelo Lost Pets.
Yes, Billy.
Morgan, would you refresh my memory on if a city resident needs to surrender their pet, either for their health reason or maybe their animal's health reasons, can they do that? And what's the process for doing that?
They can. There is a process for doing that. We do ask for an appointment to go over rehoming options. That is in our contract with Concho Valley Paws, that they provide that support. And so they have an appointment with the citizen to go over what are the issues. Sometimes they're easily resolved. Many citizens are grateful to have access to the food pantry. Perhaps they lost their job or experienced unemployment as a result of COVID-19. And if they could have just a little help to get by, they would keep their pet and retain ownership. But with what you're describing, if there's a health issue or something going on there, we do ask that they foster their own dog for a period of time, placing it up for adoption directly through Concho Valley Paws. And if they work those services and still cannot find a home for the pet, they are approved to come in to the shelter once space allows. So that option is really successful for rehoming pets. Because most owners don't want their pet to come into a shelter environment. It can be quite stressful. And so we find a lot of success through that program.
Go ahead, Lucy.
Morgan, do we have what is the number of the pets that you would take in from out of county?
It's about 10% of our annual intake. Last year I took in almost 4,600 animals, so over 4,000 animals, and about 10% of our intake, or 450 animals, are estimated to have come in from outside city limits.
Do I have questions or comments from anyone else on council? So right now, how many animals do we have in the shelter?
Today I have about 320, largely due to a large transport that happened. I'd regularly carry 400 animals, 200 dogs and 200 cats.
All right, so will this in any way impact positively the budget in terms of, by not taking in the county's animals, it will help us manage the budget?
I do expect to stay full, but our intake and those costs incurred when an animal comes into the shelter, for example, the vaccination on arrival, we would no longer have that expense. So at an estimated decreased animals of 450 at $3 per vaccine, it could be about $1,300 saved to my budget.
And I think the big statement is that the animal shelter is an issue because people choose not to take care of their animals. We only have an animal shelter because people are not taking care of the animals. So we just want to put out there that we're having to make tough decisions about animals in the animal shelter because people refuse to own and take care of and do the right thing as it relates to animals. The feral cat program problem, is it continuing to be a growing problem?
We've had a lot of success in the last couple years. We funded, the city funded out of my salary savings, a pilot program for the shelter neuter release of cats. We did that for over 12 months. We currently are out of that funding, and our rescue partner, Concho Valley Paws, has funding for that. So they're currently pulling all my feral cats, spay-neutering them, and then returning them to the field. So we have a decrease in our cat population right now. We are coming up on our busy season for cats about April 1st. We start having a very hectic kitten season. So we'll see that usually an investment like that over 3 years, you'll start to see measurable decrease in your community cat population. So we're in year 2 of that timeline.
All right, I'm going to ask you to repeat one more time the places for people to post for placement of their animals.
FindingRover.com, HelpMeGetHome.com, and the San Angelo Facebook page group, San Angelo Lost and Found Pets.
Are there any more questions at this point?
Move to approve as presented.
I have a motion for approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
With that, do we have any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor of passing item E, say aye.
Aye.
Item E passes 7-0. We will now move into the regular agenda.
Thank you.
The regular agenda, comments regarding items on the regular agenda may be made by the public when each item is discussed as outlined above. Applicants, proponents, and appellants are exempt from the time limit above and must instead limit their remarks to less than 5 minutes. Item A is first reading and public hearing of ordinances 1 CP 21-01, amending the City of San Angelo Comprehensive Plan changing certain lands from the neighborhood future land use to the commercial future land use, being .16 acres located in the 200 block of West 23rd Street, and 2, Z21-01, rezoning property from the general commercial, heavy commercial, and single-family residential zoning districts to the general commercial zoning district located at 2218 Martin Luther King Drive, 3 lots in the 200 block of West 22nd Street, and 1 lot in the 200 block of West 23rd Street, being 1.125 acres. John, you're on.
Thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. As you mentioned, this is both an amendment to the comprehensive plan and a rezoning on Martin Luther King. You can see the properties there in red. As you can see here on the left, the comprehensive plan has a strip of land planned for commercial about 3 lots deep off of MLK. And so what we're doing is adding this one additional lot back that's part of their property. And similarly, the zoning for the area is currently general commercial, heavy commercial, except for that 1 lot, which is single-family residential. And so basically this plan change and rezoning is to get all of their property as part of the same zoning district, which would be a commercial zoning district, including not only the restaurant but also the parking as well. Just a couple of pictures here of Franco's, which is the business on the subject site. And this is some of their overflow parking that extends out into that residential neighborhood. And so it's just rezoning that to the commercial district. We did send out our notices for the comp plan, 1 in favor, none in opposition, and for the rezoning, 2 in favor and 1 opposed.
And what was the opposition?
I don't believe there was. I don't believe they specified. We send out a notice to the properties and they can check the box in favor or opposed. And so they just return that form marking that they were opposed. And so staff is recommending approval based on it's simply accommodating what's already there, even though it technically is an encroachment of commercial into the neighborhood. It's already being used for that. It is really just for parking, particularly overflow parking. And it will also, that corridor is zoned for general commercial and heavy commercial. This rezoning will take it all to general commercial, so it will also have the added benefit of reducing what could be allowed, so heavy commercial type uses could not be done on those properties in the future. As I mentioned, staff does recommend approval, and this went to the Planning Commission at their February meeting, and they also unanimously recommended approval. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions for John? Yes, Billy?
I have one for John and one for Teresa. Could you go back to your map, please, John? No. No, the one that had the star where you sent out the...
Oh, okay, yeah, that one.
That one. So, if we have property that's within 200 feet of that and we didn't get a notice, what does that mean? They weren't able to find us?
Well, you can see highlighted are the properties. It's within 200 feet.
We have number 8. I think that's an 8 I'm looking at there.
Is this one right here, or?
No, look at your blue map. Yeah, that one.
Those are 8. If you're the owner of those properties, should have gotten notice of those. We do use the appraisal district tax rolls, and so that list comes directly from them, and then we send out the mailers to everyone on their list. I can go back and double check that to see who they list as the property owner and who it was sent to.
Well, I was just curious because we didn't get one, but Teresa, should I exempt myself from voting on this?
Yes, ma'am. If you have property in the area, you should do so.
Thank you.
Do
That's
I have
all.
other questions or comments? Then do I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve as presented.
Lucy moves for approval.
Second.
A second by Lane. Any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 7-0. 6-0. Thank you very much. Item B, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance providing for the abandonment of 6,582 square feet of the south side of West 23rd Street, right-of-way between Martin Luther King Drive and Farr Street.
Thank you. This is a related item. This is also at the request of Franco's. They are looking to put in a drive-through on this side of their building, but you can see the building is very close to their property line, and so there's really not room to do that. So they came in to request the abandonment of a portion of the right-of-way, and you can see this is a very wide right-of-way, much wider than is typical, and so staff was supportive of abandoning a portion of that. Again, it's only 10 or 15 feet wide. It still allows for the roadway. It doesn't encroach into the roadway, but it is some of that land between the edge of the road and their property line currently that basically the city would abandon and give up so that they can incorporate it into their property. They have worked with these adjacent homeowners, and so they will be assisting them because the pieces in front of those homes won't actually go to Franco's. It will go to those homes. And so Franco's and the work they've been doing is coordinating with those property owners. So those property owners are also supportive, and this will all be replatted. As you'll see, that's one of our conditions, to replat the what's been abandoned into those adjacent properties. Did send out our notices. There were no responses, either in favor or in opposition on that one. You can see here is the area. This area in here will be abandoned. Again, it will change from city ownership to the adjacent properties. This is just the drawing of that, the actual legal description of that area. As I should mention, they will maintain easements. There are some utilities in that area. So they will maintain the easements for those utilities. Staff does recommend approval with 3 conditions, and the Planning Commission also unanimously recommended approval with those 3 conditions. Again, the first one is our standard condition to replat those properties, to incorporate that land into their properties. We do have an established fee per the city fee schedule, and then the city would quit claim, basically say we no longer want the property. That would allow them to take it at the end of the process. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do I have questions from council? Does anyone have a question or comment? Then may I have a motion?
I move to approve as presented.
A motion by Lucy, a second by Lane. Any public comment? With none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Or 6.
6, because you didn't do on that one too. All right, item C, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance approving case PD15-04, a rezoning from the light manufacturing, general commercial, heavy commercial, low-rise, multifamily residential, and 2-family residential zoning districts to the planned development PD21-01 zoning district to allow for museums, offices, and associated uses. Located north of East Washington Street, east of South Oak Street, south of the Texas Pacific Railway, and west of Russ Street, being approximately 38 acres. John?
Yeah, this is basically an item to clean up the zoning for Fort Concho, and it does include a few surrounding properties, but it's largely just for the fort itself. And as you can see on this map, the fort is largely planned for institutional campus type development, which of course it is now. But you can see on this map that the zoning in the area, there's multifamily zoning, 2-family zoning, industrial zoning, commercial zoning. And as they are looking at projects on the site, it makes it very difficult. You know, they obviously, we don't want them to have to meet single-family or 2-family residential zoning standards. And so this really cleans it up for their whole property, getting rid of the residential and the industrial zoning, and basically making it a planned development. The planned development is based on the central business district zoning. One of the issues they've seen is building the buildings like they were built originally as they reconstruct, replica buildings that are right up on the property lines that exist there. which isn't allowed under the underlying zoning. That's kind of what prompted this to begin with. The central business zoning allows those buildings to be anywhere on the property. And so this cleanup really will help them with that particular project, but also moving forward. You can see here there's lots of old abandoned streets, but this was originally platted out in actual lots. And so there's multiple lots within the area, even though, you know, if you would look at it, you think it's just almost one big lot. And so that's some of the cleanup that this will help move forward. There's already some platting of lots, combining them together, that's going forward as well. It is consistent with the comprehensive plan for the area, and it does establish uniform standards throughout. We did send out our notices and received only 3 in favor and only 1 in opposition.
What was the opposition?
You know, I think that's another one. I can check the notes here, but I believe that was just a written opposition. Yeah, I don't believe they had any comments. Well, actually, they did have a comment. They didn't want our taxes to go up again, is what they wrote on the form. Staff does recommend approval with the 3 conditions that I'll mention, and the Planning Commission also unanimously recommended approval. The listed uses are basically everything that's out there, so including the museums, but also some office uses that are on some of the private properties. As I mentioned, it will apply the Central Business District standards, which are the most permissive for that area. And it revokes a special permit that was issued in 1991 that did some of the same things. All of that was incorporated into the plan development. So that means that special permit can go away because we've basically done the same thing through this plan development. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions from council? Tom?
Does this make it easier on Bob?
Yes,
We can't
I
be
believe it
having
does.
that. No, this almost makes too much sense.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
A second by Tommy. Any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, this one does pass 7-0. We will move into item D, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance amending the Plan Development PD15-04 zoning district of a medical facilities campus to expand the district boundaries, to modify the development standards, and to allow all uses in the central business district, as well as hospitals and drug processing and related accessory uses, being approximately 49 acres located north of East Two-Wig Avenue, east of Chadbourne Street, south of Woodrow Street, and west of Main Street. John?
Thank you. This is the Shannon PD. One of the primary reasons this is coming forward is Shannon had purchased a couple of properties that were not included in their PD, and so this expands the boundaries to include those small properties. But then we took the opportunity to work with them to sort of clean up this plan development. They've had to come back with amendments to this plan development a few times because the earlier language in the plan development was very specific on the way things had to be done. So we took a step back and sort of generalized it to allow basically all the things that we can anticipate them doing on the property while keeping some of the elevated design standards and those sorts of things, keeping those in place.
So everything within that red box is Shannon property?
Yes, and it looks like there's a little donut hole there in the middle that's not included, but yes, everything else is
all owned by Shannon right now?
I believe so. Or, you know, there may have been some pre-existing properties that were in this. I don't think so, but definitely the new properties being added were owned by them. But yeah, I believe that all of this is owned by them.
So did we send out notices to everyone on this one too, within 200
We did.
feet?
We did, and you'll see that on the map in just a second. This is in the long-range plan for downtown, and again, of course, it's a plan development district, and the central business district standards are the underlying standards, but then there are some modifications to that through the plan development. Just have a few pictures here. That's one of the properties that was added. This is the notification area. We sent out 73.
That was a house. Go back to that picture.
Well, I think that this is the subject property that they are looking at an expansion of that metal building, and this the house next door. I don't know if they own that or not. I'm not sure if we can tell from the map here, but yeah, I'm not sure if that's within or not. If it is within, then obviously I think they would own that, but it may be a house that's adjacent to the Shannon property. So this is the notification area. We did send out 73 notices, and you can see all of them there. We received 3 responses in favor and none in opposition. This is just a more detailed concept plan that goes with the plan development showing the buildings on their site. I'm not going to go through all of this. If you have questions, these are some of the standards. As I mentioned, we simplified some. We included CBD uses and some of the uses they suggested. We replaced the floor area ratio, which basically is the amount of floor space to the amount of land, which would limit the buildings, and we replaced it with a 10-story height limit, so it allows them more building area than they would otherwise be allowed under the current standards. Really no changes to setbacks. The parking, simplified the parking quite a bit because in the central business district, basically there's no parking required. We found Shannon has provided sufficient parking beyond even what our ordinances would require, and so we didn't see a need to continue that. It's really problematic both for them and for staff. For every time they add one building, we basically have to count up all the parking throughout their whole campus and make sure it's still providing what our ordinance would require. And so this simplifies that. It also simplifies some of the sign section. They had the old PD has a requirement that they have a sign plan and every sign be identified on that plan, and it has to be amended and come to you all. And we thought that was maybe asking too much for them to have to come back to you every time they want to add a sign on their property. So this basically replaces that with general sign standards, basically consistent with our sign ordinance for citywide. Again, staff is recommending approval of this. Again, it's expanding the boundaries, placing the central business district standards on the properties, and then we modified the development standards as I kind of summarized. This did go to the Planning Commission in February, and they unanimously recommended approval. Be happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions? Yes, Billy.
John, when you first started explaining this, I believe that you said the reason we were doing this is because they purchased some additional vacant properties. So it wasn't anything that would impact our property tax rolls. I mean, they didn't buy up a lot of areas that were actually paying property taxes.
No, my guess is that the properties they purchased were probably paying taxes, but the ones they added were some very small lots that were just an adjacent residential lot that was vacant next to their property. It wasn't acres and acres or new blocks of property, but it was just, little expansions on the edges.
Because Shannon being a nonprofit organization, they pay no property taxes, right?
That's my understanding.
So that's a large swath of land that.
Yeah, and they, over the years, have acquired properties adjoining their campus. Most recently, there were some homes that I saw they acquired along there. So those have sold to them over the years as they grow their campus.
Other questions or comments from City Council? All right.
Move to approve as presented.
Harry has made a motion for approval. May I have a second?
Second.
A second by Tommy. Any public comment? You must come forward.
Dietrich Toulis, just concerned citizen.
And what district do you live in?
District 6, sorry, thanks, sorry. Lucia Gonzalez, District 4, sorry. Just as I was observing the proposals, it seems like that we're taking residential areas, potential low-income areas and converting it into commercial space. without the consideration of those entities that are moving in accommodating the residents that are already there. Is there any consideration or expectation for the companies that are there to provide any distancing or accommodation for privacy now that they'll be right next to a business?
I think, go ahead, John.
Yeah, we do have standards in our standard zoning ordinance that would require if a commercial business or similar industrial kind of use goes in next to homes, there is a requirement for screening. In fact, that picture that we showed of the metal building that Shannon is proposing to expand, as part of that expansion, they're having to construct a screening fence behind that property, between them and the residences that are behind them. So we do have some of those standards in place just generally throughout the city if you're next to commercial and residential.
I think the question was more about if, in fact, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but if, in fact, there were homes that were low rent, homes that were affordable rental properties, is there any consideration for the impact on those people who might have rented those buildings for living?
From the perspective of zoning like this, the short answer is no. If they decide to purchase those properties and the owners sell to them,
private property
it's,
rights.
Yeah, it's an exchange of private property, and at this point, they have no obligation to find homes for those displaced residents. If that in fact is the case, and in this case I don't know, those may have been vacant homes already, but that's something we just really don't look at in the context of rezonings.
Okay. Did that answer your question? Yeah, I might not have understood it totally.
No, it did to a certain extent. It's just that I know from a business plan perspective how it presents in terms of advancing of a neighborhood, but from a actual residential living expectation, the folks that purchase homes in those areas expected to be in a neighborhood, and now the property is being converted into a commercial space, and you still have homes surrounding those the new development. It just seems like there's not a consideration for the folks that are still going to be there or the ones that are currently there to accommodate for them.
One of the reasons we send out notices to everyone, so if in fact they have a problem with the rezoning request, that they have an opportunity to be vocal and express their concern. And I think he showed that there was no opposition. Is that correct, John? I think that's the slide that we saw. So anyone there that had a great concern would have had an opportunity to express it, and seems like there were none.
Well, I totally understand, but just like City Councilman DeWitt said in terms of the other proposal, that's not a foolproof plan because she owns property there and didn't receive a notice. But thank you.
You're welcome.
I will add one more thing, that we are seeing an increased interest in housing in this area and downtown. In fact, your next zoning item is a rezoning to accommodate housing, not right in this area, but very close in the downtown area. So hopefully as businesses or facilities like Shannon expand and maybe push people out, that we're accommodating that, we being residents of the city, accommodating that by building other housing to the extent there's a demand for it.
All right, with that, do we have a motion? We had a motion and a second. We've had public comment. We'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. We will move on to item E, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance approving case Z21-02, a request for approval of a rezoning from the light manufacturing zoning district to the central business district zoning district, being .396 acres located at 124-128 West 4th Street. John?
Thank you. Again, John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. This is, as you mentioned, on West 4th Street. This is a property in red that you see there is currently like a warehouse type property, and the owner wants to continue some warehousing uses, but also put in some apartment type units in this area. She actually came in for a conditional use for household living. in the light manufacturing district. And so that has allowed her to move forward with the housing, but she's determined that it's in her best interest for future plans to actually go ahead and rezone to central business district, which allows some more flexibility in that respect. It is in our long-range plans as part of downtown expansion, so the central business district zoning does make sense. And as I mentioned, the property owner believes that that is a better fit for her property than the current light manufacturing zoning. This is the subject property, a couple of pictures of it. That's just looking across the street. We did send out our notices. We received 1 in favor and none in opposition. As I mentioned, it is consistent with our downtown designation. It does meet our plan requirements. The surrounding uses are largely storage and industrial, but again, that we've shown this area in the plans as a transition area, and we've seen more interest in conversion of some of these uses from the warehouse, storage, industrial type uses to more downtown uses, including housing. And as I mentioned earlier, it does serve a need for housing in and around downtown, which our recent housing plan did show a demand for housing that's currently not being met, so there's room for more housing to be built in downtown. Staff does recommend approval, as did the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do I have questions for John? All right, do I have a motion?
So move.
A motion by Harry, a second by
Second.
Tommy. Public comment, please. With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of passing item E, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 7-0. Yes,
John
sir.
leaves the dais up here. I just want to say how much I appreciated your year-end report. It was visible, it was right out spot on, and it was well done, so thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Again, I want to repeat to everyone who's watching or watches later today or about the Suddenlink issues. We know there is a problem where we know that you consistently are frustrated not only with your billing, your lack of ability to get hold of anyone, standing in line outdoors, waiting to be allowed in to address your customer service issues. It is an ongoing problem. We have contacted all of our state representatives as well as our Washington, D.C. folks. We've talked to many people who understand our frustration, and it's a frustration that exists not only for our city but others. We know it's a problem. We know you're frustrated at every single level, and we will have an opportunity at the next City Council meeting to talk more thoroughly through how you may address the issues that are making you very angry. We got it. With that, we will move into closed session, the executive session under the provision of Government Code Title V, Open Government Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meetings, Subchapter D, exceptions to requirement that meetings be open under the following sections. A, 551.071, consultation with attorney regarding the water contamination issue. We will adjourn to our closed session at this point. We're coming back from our closed session. So the first item is a consideration of items discussed in the closed session. And I believe, Allison, you have some statements to make, please.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Allison Strube, Director of Water Utilities for the City of San Angelo. I want to go through a few items. I want to reiterate that this was not a source water issue when it comes to the Paulan contamination incident. This is isolated to the Paulan and Northern Industrial area. The Northern Industrial area, and the map is available on the city's website, is still in a do not drink, cook, or consume advisory. We estimate that there are 29 residents in this area, and they are being delivered bottled drinking water for those purposes that they can't use city water for. We are continuing to investigate the source of contamination, And we are also continuing to sample the area weekly. Results have met drinking water standards following the flushing of those areas that occurred in mid-February. The businesses in the area have worked with the city to provide needed access to their facilities, and we will be working with these facilities to further improve their plumbing and further protect the city's water system. We are truly looking for a needle in the haystack scenario. It could have been chemical volumes less than a gallon that caused the issues that we saw around February 8th. We believe this is a one-time occurrence and not a continual or ongoing issue. A press release will be issued later that will further address, will make these statements as well as further address other questions constituents may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. With that, we will move into item B, which is discussion of May meeting schedule. We'll need to meet to canvass votes on Wednesday, May 12th, which is the second week, so we need to look at whether we're going to do 3 meetings or just postpone the first city council meeting to the 12th, or whether there's some other solution to not meeting 3 times. Does anyone have so you could, in other words, Julia, we could meet on the 12th of May instead of the 4th of May?
Correct.
How would council feel about that?
I won't be here that week, but
I mean, it's just a canvas, right?
Yes, sir.
I suspect
Just
it will
takes
be
2 of
15
us.
to 20
I'll
minutes.
show up on the 12th if nobody else.
Just 2 people. All right, so what we will do is we will continue with the normal schedule for city council meetings, meaning we will meet on May the 4th as well as May the 18th. And meanwhile, we will have 2 council members who will volunteer to come canvass the votes on Wednesday, May 12th.
I'll be here,
Okay.
Mayor.
At what time,
Thank
ma'am?
you. You guys will decide.
Okay.
All right, with that, we want to move into announcements and consideration of future agenda items. I know one item came up that Lucy wanted to talk a bit about as it related to Saturday night's tornado warnings.
Yes, I had gotten a email on it, and it was somebody that had just moved into our area, and they were saying that they wanted to know about the sirens, so I needed to update everyone and let them know that we do not use the tornado sirens anymore, that we use the Nexel, and it comes through your phone. Also, the weather radios that some people may have, but as far as the siren is concerned, we do not have one.
All right, with that, may I ask if there's any other announcements right now? All right, then I need a motion for adjournment.
So move, Mayor.
A motion by Tom, seconded by Tommy. And with that, we'll take the vote. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned at 11:05 a.m. on the 16th of March.